It was nothing dramatic, really. Just a soft knock at the door, a familiar face in the fading light. No great speech, no heavy conversation. Just a cup of tea between us. The kind of talk where words don't matter as much as the silence in between them. Yet, when the door closed behind them, I couldn't sleep. Because in that quiet visit, something spoke louder than all the noise of the day. It made me wonder, how often do we miss the small things that carry the greatest weight? A question asked with genuine care. A pause before answering, as if every word mattered. The way someone simply shows up without needing a reason. All night I kept thinking, it isn't the grand moments that change us, it's the unnoticed ones. The ones where life whispers, not shouts. And maybe, just maybe, we are each called to be that quiet visitor for someone else. Not to fix, not to preach, not to impress, but to remind them, in the gentlest way possible, that they are not alone. The things that often seem ordinary at first glance are the very things that carry the deepest meaning. It is easy to believe that change only comes through dramatic events, loud victories, or moments that history would mark as significant. Yet, the truth hides in the quiet spaces of everyday life. A simple gesture, a soft word, a neighbor's visit. These are the threads that often weave the fabric of our lives, more tightly than the grand milestones we spend years chasing. What makes them powerful is not their size or their scale, but the way they settle into the heart without needing attention. Think of the way a single smile can linger long after the moment passes. No one else may notice it, yet it can shift the entire weight of a weary day. Or the way someone simply remembers your name, remembers your struggle, remembers to ask how you are doing. There is nothing monumental about that on the surface. But in the quiet of your mind, it plants itself deeply, reminding you that you are seen, that you are valued, that you are not invisible. This is where the extraordinary hides, in the folds of the ordinary. The human heart is built not only to withstand storms, but also to crave connection. Connection rarely comes wrapped in spectacle. It comes in small signs that someone was paying attention, that someone cared enough to pause, that someone chose presence over absence. These moments are so subtle that the world at large walks right past them, never realizing that they were the turning points in someone else's life. The reason they matter so much is because they carry authenticity. They are not rehearsed, not staged, not done for recognition. They happen because one person, in that moment, simply acted with quiet sincerity. When you look back at the memories that shaped you, how many of them were monumental occasions? Often, what surfaces are the little things. A sentence someone spoke when you were uncertain. A hand on your shoulder when you thought no one noticed your struggle. A shared silence that said more than advice ever could. These things don't shout, they whisper. And it is in the whisper that truth often finds its way into us. We spend so much of life searching for meaning in the distant horizon, but it hides in the steps we walk every single day. What makes ordinary moments extraordinary is not the moment itself, but the awareness that rises within us when we recognize their value. It is possible to live among them and never see them for what they are. Yet when we slow down, when we allow ourselves to reflect, we begin to notice how these small interactions are the anchors that hold us steady. A knock on the door, a voice that asks how you are, a neighbor who lingers for just a while. These are not trivial details. They are the quiet proofs that life's most powerful gifts often arrive dressed in simplicity. Silence has a way of carrying weight that words can never reach. In a world where noise dominates, where everyone is trying to say something, to prove something, to explain themselves, silence often feels like an empty space. But it is not empty, it is full. It is the pause that allows meaning to breathe. It is the presence that holds a person when language would only stumble. In that space where words fall away, something deeper takes place. Connection, recognition, and an understanding that does not require explanation. When someone chooses to be present without filling the air, it speaks volumes. It tells you they are not there out of duty, not there to perform, not there to drown out your thoughts with theirs. They are there simply to be with you. That kind of presence cannot be faked. It is rare, and because it is rare, it leaves a mark. A conversation filled with words may be forgotten, but the memory of someone sitting with you in quiet solidarity can live on for years. There are moments when words are too small for the weight of what is felt. Think of grief, think of uncertainty, think of the countless times when advice was offered but only deepened the ache. Yet a silent hand resting near yours, or a glance that says, "I see you," can cut through the noise and offer comfort where explanations fail. Silence gives permission for emotions to exist without needing to be packaged neatly. It allows people to feel without judgment and to be accepted without condition. We often believe that to show care we must speak, that we must find the right words, craft the perfect response. But sometimes the right response is no response at all. Sometimes it is letting the stillness hold both people, trusting that presence is enough. In that stillness, a message is sent that cannot be misunderstood. You are not alone. You don't need to perform, you don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to be anything other than what you are in this moment. That message is louder than any speech could ever be. The irony is that silence, often mistaken for emptiness, can carry the most profound fullness. It has the power to say, "I hear you. I am here," all without sound. It demands no defense, no argument, no proof. It is free of the distortions that language sometimes brings. What remains is pure presence, raw connection. And that is why it lingers long after the moment has passed. The memory of silence that was shared honestly is never forgotten. It becomes a quiet echo in the heart, reminding us that the deepest forms of communication often have nothing to do with speech at all. A grand gesture might capture attention in the moment, but it is the small acts of care that stay rooted in the heart long after the noise has faded. The world celebrates the dramatic, the surprise gifts, the speeches, the declarations, but when the lights go down and life returns to its quiet rhythm, what truly nourishes the soul are the little reminders that someone thought of you, someone noticed, someone chose kindness in a way that asked for nothing in return. These small acts do not shout their importance, yet they hold the power to shift how a person feels about themselves and about life. Consider the way a simple message can change the course of an entire day. A few words written at the right time can soften a burden that felt unbearable only moments before. Or the way a neighbor dropping by, without any agenda, can dissolve the loneliness that had been quietly building. These are not grand events, not things the world will ever mark as significant. But to the person who receives them, they can mean everything. Small care creates a ripple, and that ripple moves far beyond what the giver could imagine. There is something deeply human about being remembered in small ways. It says, "I see you," without the need for explanation. It says, "You matter," not with fanfare but with gentleness. A meal left at your door when you are unwell. A moment of genuine laughter shared when you thought you had none left in you. The simple act of listening without interruption. These are the memories that return in quiet hours. They do not arrive dressed as miracles, but they feel like miracles all the same. What makes small acts so enduring is that they reveal authenticity. They are not performed for recognition or applause. They are rarely noticed by the crowd. They are offered because the giver chose to care. And that choice holds a purity that cannot be manufactured. It is this sincerity that gives them their staying power. Long after words are forgotten and events fade, what remains is the warmth of those subtle, often overlooked moments of kindness. Life has a way of testing us in ways that drain energy and hope, and in those times, no grand gesture is necessary to restore faith. What is needed is often just a small reminder of connection. A hand extended, a voice that checks in, a presence that stays. These things whisper strength back into the soul. They teach us that love is not only found in sweeping actions, but in the quiet repetition of care that asks for nothing but to give. The truth is that people are rarely changed by the fireworks of life. They are changed by the constancy of sparks, small, quiet, almost invisible moments of care that ignite warmth when it is needed most. These are the things that last, the things that heal, the things that live on long after both giver and receiver have moved past the moment itself. We are quick to chase after the loud moments, the ones that flash with excitement and promise, the ones that seem to shout that life is happening right here and now. We look for victories, for celebrations, for achievements we can point to and say, that is where it all changed. But in the chase for the shouts, we often miss the whispers. Life has a way of speaking softly, of sending its most important lessons in ways that are easy to overlook. And because they are quiet, we treat them as insignificant, not realizing that they are shaping us in ways the grand events never could. Think of how many mornings have passed where the sunrise painted the sky with colors more breathtaking than any canvas, yet we hurried past, eyes fixed on the next task. Think of how many conversations have ended with simple words that could have healed or guided us if we had only listened with more care. These are whispers, gentle, subtle, easily missed. They do not fight for our attention. Yet they hold truths that can steady us more than any loud achievement ever will. The shouts of life often come with pressure. They demand recognition, they demand to be remembered, they demand to be measured. But the whispers ask for nothing. They simply exist, waiting for the one who slows down enough to notice them. A child's laughter echoing in a quiet street, a stranger's kindness offered without expectation, a silence shared with someone who understands. These are not events that make headlines, but they are the very moments that remind us of what it means to be alive. We forget that the things we most long for, peace, connection, meaning, rarely arrive in explosive form. They creep in softly, through gestures, through pauses, through the unnoticed corners of the day. To ignore them is to miss the very fabric of life itself. Chasing the shouts leaves us restless, always hungry for the next high, never satisfied. But learning to hear the whispers allows us to carry contentment even in the simplest of circumstances. The irony is that the whispers are everywhere. Yet most people live as though they do not exist. They wait for life to make a grand announcement, to reveal its purpose in fireworks, when in truth it has been quietly speaking all along. It speaks in the way someone listens to you without distraction. It speaks in the moment the breeze cools your face after a long day. It speaks in the stillness where your own thoughts begin to clear and your heart remembers what truly matters. To hear life's whispers requires nothing extraordinary, only attention, only the willingness to pause, to be present, to notice. And once noticed, they change everything. Because when you begin to value the whispers, you no longer live in constant pursuit of noise. You begin to understand that the quiet moments were never empty. They were the very places where meaning was waiting to be found. Transformation does not always arrive with thunder. It rarely knocks on the door with fanfare or announces itself with a sudden blaze of light. More often, it begins in the places we overlook, in the unnoticed spaces that seem too small to matter. A thought that lingers after a conversation, a quiet realization during a sleepless night, a moment of stillness that allows a truth to settle in. These are the beginnings of change. They do not call attention to themselves, yet they shift the direction of a life in ways that only become clear when we look back. People often believe transformation is tied to great turning points, a promotion, a relationship, a loss, a victory. Those things certainly shape us, but they are not the only forces at work. Real transformation takes root in the way we respond to the smallest of experiences. It happens when we choose patience in a moment of frustration, when we notice beauty in a place where we once saw nothing, when we let a single kind word reshape how we view ourselves. These choices, these realizations are not loud, but they build a foundation stronger than any dramatic event. The unnoticed spaces carry their power precisely because they are subtle. They allow us to grow without pressure, to shift without fear of the spotlight. A person can be changing completely in silence, unnoticed by the world. yet that inner transformation prepares them for everything that follows. The small thought that says, "I can try again," or the quiet resolve to forgive, or the simple act of showing up one more time. These may seem insignificant, but they are the roots of a new way of being. The truth is that transformation is less about sudden reinvention and more about accumulation. It is built piece by piece, moment by moment, in ways that rarely draw attention. The unnoticed spaces of life give us room to reflect, to question, to learn. They teach us not through drama, but through consistency. And when the day comes where change must be visible, it is not the result of one explosive moment, but the quiet work that has been unfolding all along. Many people miss this because they are waiting for life to hand them a single dramatic turning point. They do not realize that transformation has already begun, hidden in the unnoticed corners. Every time they resisted giving up, every time they paid attention to a lesson life whispered, every time they chose to act differently even in small ways, they were being transformed. The spaces that seemed ordinary were never ordinary at all. They were sacred, shaping strength, resilience, and clarity that only reveal themselves later. The unnoticed spaces are not wasted spaces. They are the quiet workshops of the soul. They remind us that becoming more than we were yesterday does not always need the stage or the applause. It only needs awareness, patience, and the willingness to allow even the smallest of moments to guide us towards something greater. To be a quiet visitor in someone's life is not about arriving with answers, solutions, or speeches. It is about showing up in a way that reminds another person that they do not carry their burdens alone. The world often tells us that to help someone, we must do something grand, that our presence must come with wisdom or extraordinary action. But the truth is much simpler. Sometimes what a person needs most is not to be fixed, but to be accompanied. To know that in the midst of their silence, their confusion, or their pain, someone is willing to sit beside them without demanding anything in return. There is a kind of healing that only presence can give. Words, no matter how carefully chosen, can sometimes feel heavy or misplaced. Advice can miss the heart of what is needed. But presence carries no agenda. It simply says, "I am here, and you matter." That message, unspoken but deeply felt, has the power to lift a spirit in ways explanation never could. It acknowledges that a person's value is not tied to their performance or their circumstances, but to their humanity alone. We underestimate the impact of quiet companionship. We imagine that love is proven only in dramatic gestures, in sacrifices that are seen and celebrated. Yet often, the most powerful expressions of love are the ones no one notices except the one receiving them. A visit at the right time, a willingness to listen without interruption, an unspoken acceptance. These are not grand acts, yet they can be the very things that give someone the courage to continue. To be that quiet visitor requires humility. It means setting aside the urge to impress, to speak, to offer quick fixes. It asks us to be patient, to allow space for silence, to trust that our presence is enough. And in doing so, we embody something rare in a world driven by noise. The ability to simply hold space for another soul. This kind of showing up carries its own quiet strength. It is not about control or influence, but about solidarity. When we think back on the people who shaped us, we rarely remember the ones who dazzled us with grand speeches. We remember the ones who showed up when they didn't have to. We remember the ones who sat with us in silence when we had no words. We remember the ones whose presence alone told us we were not forgotten. These are the visitors who leave a permanent mark, not because of what they said, but because of who they chose to be in our moment of need. And so, we are each called, in our own way, to be that quiet visitor for others. Not to solve everything, not to fix every broken piece, but to stand with them as proof that they are not alone in their journey. It is a calling that asks for no recognition, but leaves behind something priceless. The memory of being cared for in silence, and the strength that such care awakens in the human heart. In the end, what lingers is not the noise of the world, but the quiet moments we allowed ourselves to notice. the small knock on the door, the silence shared between two souls, the small acts of care that never made headlines, these are the things that shape us. Life is not only found in the shouts, but in the whispers. Not only in the grand stages, but in the unnoticed spaces that quietly transform us when we are paying attention. Perhaps that is the lesson hidden in a simple visit from a neighbor. That life is asking us, gently but persistently, to become more present, more attentive, more willing to show up for one another. Not with grand displays, not with rehearsed words, but with authenticity, with stillness, with the courage to simply care. And when we do, we become reminders to each other that no one walks this path alone. So if you leave with anything tonight, let it be this: the extraordinary is often disguised as the ordinary. Pay attention, lean into the whispers, and when you can, be that quiet visitor in someone's life, for those are the moments that echo the longest in the heart. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing this space, and may the quiet truths of life find their way to you in the most gentle of ways. Until we meet again, goodbye and take care.